Hello, timelyart here, and today's video is about how to set up signals. Now, I've been wanting to make this video a long time. Signals are the method to screen like a whole lot of markets, because it's 10 times as fast as using alerts, and it doesn't use alerts, so you're not limited in how many alerts there are on TradingView. For some reason I didn't come around to doing it, but I'm kind of stuck with a little bit of RSI in my shoulder, so I might as well do some videos. Right, so signals. So here you can see the daily setup I use. I talked in the previous video, I talked about how to use YAML within YAML. So this, if you don't know what this is or how this works, please have a look at video number 6. We're going to talk about signals. You will see that there's no alerts used here, just signals. And let me grab the right like chart with it. Right, so we've got a chart here. Before we do anything, we need to talk about chart settings, unfortunately. To make this work, we have to go to status line in your chart settings, and you have to make sure that you have set the indicator titles, you have unchecked indicator arguments, and you have checked indicator values. Right, so we need to see the indicator values, because that is how Kairos reads the values for the indicator. So in my case, you can see that if there is a setup, so it doesn't fire here, otherwise, well, you could use this one as well, but what I use is the values on the next bar. So I'm sure that my signal is confirmed, and I will print a stop loss, an entry, and a target. Now these stop loss, entry, and target are shown on the indicator values here, and these indicator values I can read with Kairos. So if Kairos detects that there are like the values NA, then there's no signal. But if it sees decimal values, like floating point values, then it will I have set up my YAML file in such a way that it uses these values. Okay, so let's have a look at how it actually looks, a signal. So you can see that I'm using a snippet, in this case the Davo long. So this is how a signal really looks like. You can define multiple indicators if you want, but usually you use one indicator, and you make sure that the indicator has all the values listed that you need for your setup. So a stop loss, a target, well, usually you would go for a stop loss and the target and the entry point. With setting alerts, you need to define the chart index and the pain index. And what the meat really is about signals is the so-called trigger. So when is a signal triggered? And it's simply, we basically make an equation. So we have a left hand side and a right hand side, like a normal math equation. And what we're telling Kairos here is that it should look for index number 6. So if we go back to the chart, indexes all usually start with 0. So you count from 0. So you have 1. I wish it doesn't do that, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but we start with 0. So 6 really is this value here. This is number 6. This is number 7. This is number 8. And we say that the left hand side, number 6, has to be bigger than 7. So basically so if we go here, so basically the entry point has to be bigger than the stop loss. So if we detect that the value is bigger than the stop loss, then it's a long signal. Conversely, if, and I will show this in a moment, for the short setup, if the entry is lower than the stop loss, then Kairos, okay, I were telling Kairos, okay, this is a short setup. This is how I use signals. You can use it in different ways. You can say, okay, you know, when the signal actually fired, you can see that I have a 1 there on the green, and that would be like index number 4, or the red one would be index number 5. So and then we can also tell, so that's the left hand side, and we defined on the right hand side is index number 7. I could also easily say, okay, I don't want to compare with a value or with an index. I want to compare with just like a value. So if we're basically saying here, if number 6 is bigger than 0, then we've got a signal. Or we can say if index number 6 isn't right, isn't NA, then we have a signal. So basically, if there's any value for index number 6, then there's a signal. I'm also telling Kairos to ignore NA and 0 values. It's not necessary. I mean, it is. You need to ignore NA values when you have to like an index here, because otherwise it will read. So, for example, if you would do this and you would not ignore NA values, like just like this, for example, right? Then it would see, okay, NA, then it would come across like a signal like here, and it says, okay, NA, well, that's greater or equal than NA, because NA equals NA, right? So if you're doing with values, it's a good practice. It's good practice to ignore NA values, for sure. For the same reason, I also ignoring the 0.0 values, although they are not common really, and it's not really useful because some markets have like 8 decimal points and others have 7. So for example, I think that Binance has 7, or Kraken has on some markets 7 and other markets 8. It's kind of not standardized in crypto land. So anyway, this is basically how it works. You can set like lower than, equal, or unequal here, and then so that's basically how a signal gets triggered. Okay, Kairos gets this triggered, and now we can look at we can also pull that data in and use it in our information that Kairos will convey, either via Google Sheets, webhooks, or in a mail, in a summary mail. So it can use the data from the indicator, like value 6, like the entry value is index number 6, the stop loss is index 7, and the target is 8. The names you use here, like the keys, you can use whatever you like, but you have to then refer to these where you are generating your message. So In this case, I've defined it in the CSV and JSON exports. So let's show where those are. Let's have a look at those. That's in the snippet. Right. So you can see I've put in, so if I make a CSV file, then it is, basically I've defined entry, stop loss and target here. So if I would have changed this like target number 1, maybe you have multiple targets, for example, and I would call this target number 1, then I also need to change it here. And the same goes for the JSON, which is what you would usually use. The CSV is used for Google Sheets. JSON is usually used for the webhooks. So you want to make sure that both are changed. So I would also change this to target 1, right? Always use uppercase here. Yeah. So that's how you pull in data into your JSON or CSV, and how you can communicate that with how you can communicate that to different platforms as well. I probably will do a video about webhooks at some point in the future, but yeah, for now you have to do it with you have to deal with this. In the same reason that you're using data, you can also use like fixed text or fixed labels. So if the value doesn't change, for example, I'm defining here an ID, and I'm defining a source, and I'm also defining if it's a long or a short signal, and I do this because TRI wanted this information. So this is just something that is fixed, and I basically use it only with the webhook for TRI. I don't need to have to include this in my summary mail, for example. I hope this is clear. If you have questions, please make your comments down below, so it will become clear for you, but also for other viewers. This is kind of technical because it's like a math equation basically, and it's precise. If you don't do it right, this in the right way, then you have it doesn't work, right? So the last thing I want to do is, and I hope I didn't screw up my file, because I want to run this, of course. I will run a demo. I will leave it on. It will take some time. I will speed it up. Put a little bit of music behind it, and we will look at the results at the end. All right. Right, so it has ended. So let me pull my mail. Come on, jeez. Right, so you can see it just created my mail. It's also way easier because you can generate the mail like immediately. You don't have to wait to make sure that you've that you got all these alerts from TradingView. So this is basically how it is. It's just the same. It's the same alert summary you can make. It just includes signals. You can, if you want, you can mash up, like you can include alerts and signals in one YAML file and just put everything into one summary. That's not how I use it. I just use signals because it's so much fast. You saw how fast it is. It's like, I don't know, like one market every 1 to 1.5 seconds. So it's just like, it takes 5 minutes to scan 200 markets or something. So it's really, wow, yeah. There's no other way to do it. Once you've done signals, once you've set it up, once you know how it works, you're not going to get back to alerts. Yeah, that's how it works. I mean, the only reason why you would use alerts is because you can use webhooks. Yeah, I mean, I can use webhooks with Kairos already. I don't need to create alerts to use webhooks. But I mean, if you're accustomed to AutoView, or you're accustomed to, or you have like a subscription to AutoView or a subscription to 3 commas, then maybe you do want to use alerts, but you don't have to. Yeah, that's basically it. This is way easier than using alerts, in my humble opinion. This is how I use it myself. This is how I share it with other platforms like TRI. It's really convenient. It's really convenient. So I highly encourage you to set up Kairos in this way. It's also easier on the server, on the TradingView server, because you don't have to create all these alerts. Because the reason why there are limitations on alerts is because it put a huge strain on the servers. Bear in mind that like the quicker your PC is, the more RAM you have, the better your connection is, the quicker you can run signals. It's largely dependent on how quick your web browser is, your client. Bear in mind though that, like as well with alerts as well, or in general, like TradingView is slower on Sunday night, probably because there's no one there to maybe put additional server resources available, to make additional server resources available. So make sure it runs smoothly. I try to mess around with the delays a little bit if it's not working for you with the default delays, but really I took a lot of effort in reducing these delays and simply wait for elements to be available. So it should work reasonably well from out of the box. It's just if you have issues or whatever, and you're not quite sure where the issue is, then you can also reach me on either on GitHub or at the TRI community. Right. Alright, so this concludes this session, this video. I hope it was useful to you. I hope you will be using signals, and I'll see you in the next video.